unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to In Depth, production of Souls and Liberty, coming to you right here from Houston, Texas. I'm Gary Michael Vorse, and joining us today with, first of all, an exciting announcement, and then all of his numbers and polls and all that stuff that he spends his whole life every day doing is Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Polling. Mark, how are you? Always good to have you on, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, doing great. We are riding the high from declaring polling independence on July 4th, 2025. We just broke this news yesterday morning. Rasmussen reports, Rich Barris at Big Data, Matt Towery of Insider Advantage, and Robert Cahaly at Trafalgar have all agreed. We've earned our mutual respect. We've agreed to come together and form something pretty big and new for the industry. And listen, it's polling. Like, this stuff isn't really exciting. So it's the National Association of Independent Pollsters. It sounds like something that's probably been around for 100 years. But no, it's like
100 hours. It's been around 100 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to change the industry because we're seeing the same bad stuff over and over again. It's only getting worse. And you look at the Axios headline about the Democrat lawmakers concerned because their core voting bloc wants them essentially to get shot in resisting Trump, then I think it's pretty easy to draw a dotted line and say that the corporate media, the establishment press, is just going to continue to lie to everybody. And so people with integrity trying to make sure the right information gets out, it's going to be more important than ever.
You know, it's one of the things that, a lot of the audience knows, obviously, I've covered politics and election nights and all the polls leading up to it and everything. And I used to sit there and go to like 100 different sources, the individual polls, various amalgamation sites, the Real Clear Politics. And according to Real Clear Politics average, well, of course, thrown into that average are these really disreputable polls. And, you know, all you needed was one or two to skew the average in favor of Harris to go to the 2024 race. And I'm always looking at like you guys and, Trafalgar and Insider. I'm looking at them all and going, how come these three or four guys, when you get the Real Clear Politics average page there, everybody's just scattered in together based on whenever your last poll was or the poll range. So, there wasn't sort of a distinction. But I saw the distinction. And I'm like, how come these guys have Trump up by 1, 2, 3, you four guys, and then all the other guys have, it's tied, it's Harris by 3, and then, there'd be some weird CBS one, Harris by 9. And I never quite, I'm just telling you, I'm so glad you guys have done this because I was so sick of saying, why is Real Clear treating just any poll as though they all have equal weight and equal reputation and equal credibility? They just don't.
Well, the problem with Real Clear Politics is they've defined themselves in a way that is very unbiased and independent. And unfortunately, you can't carve out 3/4 of the industry and throw them in the garbage. They wouldn't have a product. And so Real Clear Politics is trying to do two things at once. It's trying to be unbiased and present all this information, but it's also trying to be accurate. And so the problem therein is that there are no right-wing pollsters. There really aren't. And so Real Clear Politics keeps missing to the left. They probably would prefer if I was like, 3 or 4 or 5 points too Trump heavy. But the problem is that really we've seen over time that nobody is. And Real Clear Politics does kind of obfuscate things a little bit, not on purpose, but like you said, everything gets dumped in there. And so it's hard to really bifurcate, well, what's good, what's bad, what's the trend been for these. But I've done that. I've done the charts, and we just saw it back in April for Trump's 100 days. Mm-hmm. I separated a list of polling that I thought was pretty accurate, a list of polling that I thought was garbage. And through this 100-day period, Trump's numbers were relatively steady. They track with Rasmussen reports. And in the mainstream media corporate pollsters, it was like this. Boom, right at 100 days.
Yeah,
like they literally added 6 points of bias to tank his numbers.
Right. I'm hoping one of the things that, and I know Real Clear is just doing their thing. I don't think they're like trying to tank Trump or MAGA or anything like that. But I think it would be helpful, since you guys have banded together now and have formed this, your organization, first of all, you guys are the ones that nailed every one of these elections. 16, 20, 24. And we're so, I don't know, it's like within a half a point of everything. I mean, that gives you street creds. So it seems to me that if you've all formed this organization, that the least thing that Real Clear could do is present two sets of little bordered areas and say, well, here's the four that are always right, and here's their average. Trump is up by whatever, 10. And here's the ones that, you don't have to say biased or anything. Just say, these are the ones that always seem to miss, well outside the margin of error. And they say Trump minus 30. It just seems like that would be, from Real Clear's own perspective, it seems like that would be a very logical thing to do.
I haven't talked to them yet. I'm not sure how they're going to deal with this. They might not do anything. Maybe they will. But what you're talking about is taking polling data and saying, okay, some of this over time has been more accurate than others. Let's adjust it, or let's blah, blah, blah. That's what 538 and Nate Silver tried to do. And I think you're right. I think it's very effective. But the point is that ubiquitously every polling gatekeeping organization has been corrupted by leftists. That's the problem. Right. And so, you could even see it with the AAPOR, who, again, I'm sure there's very nice people there, but they defined their bylaws essentially, in my understanding, to keep us out as members of large. And now I think that their opinions might have changed, but I can tell you what they did do. In November, right after the election, they emailed me and asked me to join a data transparency program so that I could provide my data to them to increase trust in the polling industry. And it's like, okay, now you want my data? To increase trust in an organization I'm not allowed to be a member of? No, thank you.
What is so give us a little bit of a backstory here. Obviously somebody of the four of you emailed or called or texted or whatever the first time, had the idea and said, hey, let me reach out to whoever. What went on behind that?
It's kind of a long story. You mentioned street cred. The thing is that we've all had street cred for a long time, and Absolutely. It's very hard to poll, so sometimes you miss. But it's very easy to cherry pick data and say, oh, look, Rasmussen did this. They're not accurate. Well, that's not true. Especially in a world with Quinnipiac in it, right? So what the trend has been is that each individually, we've been independent and trying to wrestle with a world that wants us to not exist. We were on government censorship lists, our advertisers have pulled, our clients are dwindling as basically Washington turns into a self-licking ice cream cone. And we're all basically struggling financially because, and the problem is, if none of us had existed, I think the polling would have been very different in the fall. And so after this election, we all looked around and said, this election wasn't stolen. We all believe in polling. Every one of us here had our own methodology and did pretty fine without talking to each other. And so if something's going to happen, now's the time, because we all can't continue. And I don't think that if something doesn't change, not all of us might make it to the next presidential cycle, and that'll be a real problem because, again, then you're left with Quinnipiacs of the world. It's wild. If you look at Real Clear Politics over the last couple of weeks, you had major polling names that were 25 points to the left of us. Yeah. And I'm not saying that one of us is right or wrong. Well, I'm right.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, you are, and you should say it.
Yeah, I don't know, it's like maybe it was an upswing of the data or a little trend or a response bias, but two major names in the polling industry should not be 25 points apart. And so the problem, I guess, is going to get worse, and we're going to try and fix it. And hopefully it'll be a cool kids club where everybody who has integrity comes and joins us. And, hopefully it'll grow to become things that have, conferences and education series and shares stuff about methodology. But we're not in it to increase transparency or nitpick people's methodologies because, again, all four of us do different things and we were fine. It's all about the will to be accurate.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head? I actually didn't check this, and if you have it, it's just a curiosity point. But of the four of you, I know the four all had the correct prediction and numbers and all that and everything for 24 for November. What was the rankings among the four of you? Like, who came in first, as opposed, in terms
there's so
of
many different,
who won?
Yeah, there's so many different yardsticks, and I find it creepy to make my own to compare against other people in the industry. That's one of the reasons that we're talking together, is because we don't have this hostile competitive relationship. Right. Instead, it's all like we really do mutually respect each other's work. And if you want to look at yardsticks, Real Clear Politics can tell you something, but they haven't put out any rankings. And if you look, again, you can tell something from looking at the history. It doesn't tell you everything, but it doesn't show the state polling, how many times you polled, when did you poll, what was the average of all your polling or your final call. And so the measuring sticks that people pretty much use right now are 538, which no longer exists. Right. Nate Silver, who is a glorified newsletter writer now, and he doesn't even know, he's never conducted a poll in his life. And the really only other one is the graphic that Atlas rushes to make the day after election to pat themselves on the back with their own measuring stick. Correct. So there is really no place to go and get a meaningful look at these numbers. And maybe this organization will do that, maybe it won't. But again, like, polling's data. I don't want somebody to implicitly trust everything I put out. I want them to question it all. Sure. I want there to be zero trust. Like, look at my numbers, compare it to other people's. Look at how I did it. Do you think it's wrong? Do the questions inside not make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Your weighting or your models correct, I mean, all of that business. I think on one of the past times we interviewed you, I told you I learned about political polling from Warren Matofsky, who was kind of the godfather of all of it back at CBS in the 1984 Reagan-Mondale race. And so I was just sort of there near the beginning of all of this, at least the real serious beginning of it, almost daily tracking. CBS was doing like every third day tracking or something for the last month of that 1984 race. And it was just interesting listening to the, I guess I would say, precision of the models that they were using. And we have to do this, and and then I've got to change this and change that. And back then, anyway, they were pretty spot on. Clearly, that was a few presidential elections ago, and of course, BT before Trump.
Well, before everybody got rid of their landlines too, which is part of the problem, right?
Yeah, it sure is. What do you have in terms of? We were talking about a little list of. By the time this show goes up, which, a few hours, everything on the list has changed. There can be 25 new things in the, heading up the news cycle. But of a bunch of the big topics right now that are kind of dominant, at least for probably the next, 24 hours, what polling do you have on any of these that, you could share and say, hey, well, so this is what most Americans this or whatever that. What do you have? What are your latest numbers on whatever your latest topics are?
So the problem is the way we do things. It always takes us 4 or 5 days to get questions back. And everything in the news cycle right now is stuff that we haven't pulled on right now, but that we've been building up a huge context of. And the biggest one, in my opinion, the two things that are going on, three. 4, 8. Yeah, let's rattle them off. Okay,
36.
Elon Musk has mutinied from Trump. Is going to form a third party. It's not viable. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't even understand American public opinion. He thinks that there's a middle 80%, and that's completely wrong. There's less than a middle 8%, if that. Right. And all he's going to do is upset a very delicate balance, potentially, in critical, battleground states for Congress and Senate races, and potentially screw up the slim Republican majority. If you get a Senate Republican majority, they're probably going to get rid of the filibuster, and then we're going to be in a whole different situation. Then you have the big, beautiful bill, which quite frankly was a polling enigma. Nobody really cares about it or even understands what it means. Yeah. They don't know if it cuts the deficit, increases the deficit. And it, quite frankly, it didn't poll that great. And it hasn't affected Trump's numbers, but it took all of this political capital. Then you have the Epstein thing, which I think is probably the biggest one. But the messaging out of the administration has been absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
They think that they're just going to be able to wave a magic wand and make this issue go away. But the polling has said that people care about this.
Sure,
70%. Yeah, almost 70% wanted this stuff released. Fewer people think Epstein killed himself than believe in space aliens. You can't make it go away with a really stupid DOJ document and one question at a press release. And these things matter because, well, Trump can say, oh, well, we're still talking about Epstein. It happened 5 years ago. Well, no, it's representative of the elite capture. And Americans know this. And it was an electoral revolution, like you said. And they're mad if that falls apart.
Yeah, I got to say that there's two. This is now the second occasion, two occasions where I would say Trump has sort of failed to read the room, to use the common expression. Once was after COVID, when he kept going around and, Operation Warp Speed, I got this vaccine here and everything, and he was getting booed. And finally, he just, whoever had that on the teleprompter just took it out, and Trump's like, well, I'm not talking about the vaccine anymore. And it seemed like I think it's fair to say he had leveled out. He kind of got it. He got the stuff and everything else. But this, I don't think he's like reading the room here. I mean, what are people most concerned about Epstein? I mean, I suppose it's an academic question. Was he murdered or did he kill himself? Sure, if he's murdered, that opens up a whole new cavern of things to have to explore. But at the root of all of this, why does anybody care about Epstein at all, really? Because children were involved, and at least hundreds, if not thousands, of children's lives were destroyed. And by the way, where are all those children? Where are they? One or two of the victims has come out, and one of them's dead now, the 41-year-old, God rest her soul. But, I mean, these were at least hundreds of children. Where are they? And that's, I think, what has people's, don't screw with children. And that, I'm really kind of shocked that doesn't seem to have penetrated, Team Trump on any of this. It's kind of like, what? What do you mean are you still asking about Epstein? We're asking about the victims.
Yeah, that was not a good response, he said. The problem that I have is that I consume a lot of information, but what I have to do is understand what Americans think based on only one stream of information, and it's limited. Yeah. So it's very hard to ask the right question, to understand. It's very hard to interpret what all of America thinks about something.
Sure.
But what we see is, if you look at, for instance, the COVID thing with the vaccines, most Republicans got vaccinated. It was in the 60s. And less than half, but close to half, but less than half, thought it was at least somewhat likely the vaccines were causing a significant number of deaths after the vaccines had been around for a while.
Right.
But it was post, obviously, the 2020 campaign. And so when he was out on the stump and people were booing him, or like after the fact, right?
Yeah.
That was core MAGA. And that was not a huge number, but it was his audience.
Sure.
So, listen to them, right? But then you have, then you look at the previous stuff that happened with Epstein, with Pam Bondi's binder, and Twitter got really mad. Everybody was screaming at Pam Bondi to resign on Twitter. They said, it was horrible. Well, a few weeks after that, we asked Pam Bondi's favorability, and only 8% of Republicans strongly disapproved of her. So that had not gotten to Normieville. And so where we are now is, I'm concerned that this is going to get to Normieville, because all of a sudden it looks like accountability is not coming. And I think my theory is that this is all about accountability. Almost 2/3 of the American electorate thought that the outcome of the 2020 election was affected by cheating, and that this one was going to be as well. Roughly 60% of people thought that Joe Biden was profiting from enemies of America. Over 60%
just 60%.
I mean, it's a 2-to-1 country on a lot of these core issues,
sure,
deportation, and yep. It's and then you're still going to get low information normies that will show up out of nowhere and vote for Democrats. But I'm just saying, in the polls, only 30% trust the federal government. Over 70% are angry at the level of waste, fraud, and abuse. These are all accountability signals. And when you come out and with a couple of very, very poorly worded statements, not even statements, like just off the cuff sound bites
they're weird.
that imply to people there's going to be no accountability, that's a problem.
Yeah, you say like case closed. Does that mean you found the 700 little boys and girls that were raped on that island? You found them? That's good.
No, not only that, Gary. Nobody's ever watched the videos. Nobody's ever talked to anybody. Nobody that's ever worked there has ever signed a sworn deposition. Nobody has ever taken documents and read them. None of this evidence exists. We have a Federal Bureau of Investigations with tens of thousands of employees, and nobody collected a single piece of evidence about anything that happened down there. It's just too hard. It was 20 years ago. We can't open a cold case they're lies. What
was he sitting in jail for?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I mean, you're just going to throw him in jail, then try to find a charge to hang around him. I mean, that's what Democrats do. It was very.
I think these victims exist. I think they probably some of them don't. I don't know, but I bet you a whole heck of a lot of them literally signed releases for hush money payments that are signed documents held by lawyers or their own. They have them, right? Sure, some of them were interviewed. There's probably interview forms about the interviews that happened. You know what I mean? Why pay somebody hush money if there's no evidence?
Yeah, and why is Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in prison trafficking? I mean, if you're trafficking children, of course the implication is sex trafficking children. The implication is you're trafficking them to somebody. Well, where are all those dudes? Who are they?
Traffic them in a big old circle, I guess. I don't know. But my point is that you look around, and even on Twitter, you can kind of see the matrix, because a lot of bots showed up out of nowhere, and they're like, "Oh, it's time to put this in the rearview mirror." And it's like, okay, well, no. And then you see all of this conflating it with, we want to see the videos, we want to see the lists. No, people want to see powerful predators get arrested. That's what people want to see.
Yeah, exactly. And they want, I know the sort of the buzzword is accountability, but in the theological realm, the buzzword would be justice. One of the four cardinal virtues, because that is missing here. And I think it's kind of the impetus really behind everything going on right now with Team Trump, whether they happen to be negating justice, and at least that's what it appears to be in the case of, Epstein, the whole Epstein fiasco, or all these other things that are in the news are sort of a reassertion of justice. Rogue judges getting smacked down by SCOTUS, and Chinese farmland bought here in America, being taken away. All of these sorts of things. People are like, whoa, this is wrong. This is wrong. And, part of it's common sense wrong. Part of it's natural law wrong. This shouldn't be going on. This shouldn't be allowed to happen. And people are happy to see, the compass kind of redirect. I do want to get...
I think you're right. I should poll test these words. I think you're right. Because remember how much people talked about grievance and revenge?
Yeah.
Right before Trump was assassinated, it was a huge push to try and paint him as some kind of retribution candidate.
There's not much daylight between justice and revenge.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. But it's okay, they perverted justice. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And so, again, they probably killed hundreds of thousands of people by using shoddy science and corporate greed. That's a problem. And regulatory capture. They perverted the justice system to pursue Donald Trump. Even now, it's I think people might fundamentally feel, and I want to figure out how to measure this, that what is coming out of Congress is not just, because people overwhelmingly support mass deportations. Again, that's one of those 2-to-1 issues.
Yep.
And yet, what I heard, Charlie Kirk came out and broke this. It was pretty incredible, but I actually heard it from an inside contact that knows about immigration stuff in D.C.
Yeah.
And they've been working for, I think, a while now behind the scenes on some kind of deal, some kind of thing where Republicans and Democrats trade over a barrel on what's going to happen with immigration in the country. And the word amnesty gets thrown around. Yeah. And that's because on the Republican side, all those big business interests, all the Republican sugar daddies, they want all those illegal immigrants here.
They want all that slave labor.
Yep, 100%.
That's almost literally slave labor. I think one of the things, as I recall, I think it was either late yesterday afternoon or maybe this morning, Trump came out and said, there's no amnesty. That was it. So
Brooke Rollins did too. You could tell that somebody said, listen, Brooke, I don't care what you say. You have to go out there and say no amnesty. It's like
there is no amnesty. And I guess my concern, let me ask you this, with this Epstein thing hanging out there, and really the fact that it's the right wing, whatever you want to call them, conservative podcasters, social media influencers and all that, they're the ones that keep talking about this. It's interesting. I did an interview the other day with Rod Martin, and I said, you think it's kind of funny? There's not one Democrat who's come out and said, release the Epstein files. Not one. I mean,
they think Trump's on them, like the core, and yet they're not. You're right. It doesn't make sense.
Why wouldn't Nancy Pelosi, who has nothing to lose at this point, come out and say, release those Epstein files? For that matter, none of the Republican lawmakers really have either. I mean, I think there's been one or two that have said something or posted something on social media. But the fact that D.C. is like stone silent on this, and I don't know, it's just weird. It really is weird. But anyway, my question on that, with sort of that canvas, I don't think MAGA land is giving Trump a mulligan on this. They want answers. I want answers. Did a commentary a couple of days ago saying you need to step up on this and say what the deal is. But beyond that, do you think that this sitting out there just kind of hovering around, dark cloud, whatever you want to call it, has the potential to derail some of the other issues, or maybe that just sort of translates into, just sort of moves over from the next year into the 2026 midterms thing? I don't like something there, because if there's another misstep unrelated to Epstein, but there's Epstein and then there's some other misstep here in the next, 2 weeks, month, now it looks like you're starting to rack up losses.
Yeah, I think this is like one of those telltale issues. Maybe call it a canary in the coal mine. I don't know. You notice people haven't been talking about vaccines as much, but it's very similar, right? It's a very similar situation. There was a wrong. It needs to be righted for justice, and it's not going away. The election integrity one is another very profound one, because now we have 70 and 80% polling on things like, voter ID and paper ballots. Right. So I don't think any of these things are going to go away. And let me paint it a kind of a different way. I think about why I think these are critical. Is that just this morning I heard from somebody that I've polled for before. His name's David Giglio. He ran in 22 in California District 13. Basically what happened is the Kevin McCarthy-led California Republican establishment did everything in their power to screw this guy over, including using his own vendors against him and shutting him out of all kinds of stuff, because they didn't want a MAGA candidate to win. Right. They wanted the, Kevin McCarthy bootlicker moderate to win. Mm-hmm. Guy's name was Duarte, and he won, and he came in, and he was the leftmost voting Republican congressman.
Left?
Then what happened Then what happened in 24 is he ran up against Adam Gray, and he underperformed Trump and got beaten and lost because he was not a conservative. And people overwhelmingly everywhere in the country, maybe your state doesn't have that many Republicans, but if I talk to them, they're going to be 2-to-1 MAGA over traditional Republican. That's Absolutely. Just the way it's going to work. So what I heard today is that Giglio wants to run again. I polled. He polls very well. And he told me the NRCC is against me. They're going to shut me out of everything. They want to run Duarte again, and I can't even get to the Trump people, and there's literally no funds for me at all. And so basically, the establishment Republicans still exist. I think they're counting their days until they can basically stage a Trump mutiny. Yeah. They don't want MAGA. This is very uncomfortable stuff for them. Their interests don't like this at all. They want to put it in the rearview mirror. And this is about that mutiny. And I think we can question whether the One Big Beautiful Bill was the best the Republicans could do or not. But I think people are on these Epstein things because it's like, wow, the establishment, they don't want it to win. And when you see Trump come out and say, oh, nothing to see here, if Trump wanted to put this issue in the rearview mirror, in my opinion, what he should say, he should have Kash Patel come out and make a statement that we are investigating all of the people who went to Epstein Island and allegedly violated these girls. And here's how many agents we have committed to the case. And we're going to have a report in 5 months about how, the progress and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
That would make the issue go away. It would go away. Yeah. Why don't they just do that?
And hopefully that statement would be truthful and they would have put some of these guys in leg irons and march them down Main Street and put them on trial. They destroyed kids' lives. Come on.
100%. And so this is one of those other things. It's like you say, oh, well, the stuff coming out of Kennedy, the interactions with Farmer looks promising. Yeah. Maybe there will be accountability. Looks promising. Maybe we will get this. Looks promising. Maybe we are going to deport everybody. Oh, no, the Republicans are talking about amnesty again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's kind of funny that the whole Elon guy, the whole thing is, let's start a third party. There kind of already is a third party. It's called MAGA. So you want to start a fourth party. I don't know. We'll see how that whole Elon thing goes. Another one I want to ask you about here, just get your thoughts on it, is the Comey-Brennan. I haven't done any polling because it just came out yesterday. But the Fox News report that says James Comey and John Brennan are now under criminal investigation. When I read it, I had a little bit of a, you don't really announce investigations, you announce indictments, which come as a result of the investigation. But, was that a smokescreen to cover up and sort of deflect from all the Epstein headlines? Or
I heard that maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of odd, but nonetheless, it does seem peculiar that.
Well, there's precedent, so let's just announce an Epstein investigation, right? Like, see, it works. We should just do that. We do actually have polling on this, and I think, and this was done before the announcement, right? But there had been stuff in the news before. But we started with asking people if they still believed in the Russian collusion hoax, and 42% still believe, but 49% don't. So it's -7. And only 59% of Republicans say it's not at all likely Trump colluded with Russia. But, CIA recently issued a report which found that Obama administration officials, including the CIA director at the time, John Brennan, manipulated intelligence about Russia to get Trump. Do you agree or disagree with the CIA report? And it's agree 49-34. Should officials who were involved in the manipulation of intelligence to get Trump be criminally prosecuted? 57-26. Yes.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. 73% of Republicans, independents, 51-26. And do you agree with this statement? What the intelligence community did to Donald Trump is bigger than Watergate. And it's agree 54-38. So pretty good results there.
Sure.
He's happy with this.
That seems to be a horse they could ride into the barn pretty easily.
Yep. But again, look at all the things that's to the right of this. E-Verify, massive deportations, photo IDs, paper ballots, election audits, rooting out all the waste, fraud, and abuse in Social Security. All of this stuff is to the right of putting John Brennan in jail. So let's do all that stuff too.
Yeah, it does seem very. Do you have any polling on the for just lack of a better term, the mostly peaceful protests attacking ICE agents and law enforcement agents and the whole deportation thing.
Oh, do we? We did. I think we did stuff back when
LA was
stuff
burning.
was going on in LA. Yeah, Gavin Newsom polling. Now, with the BLM stuff, people were not happy with the mostly peaceful. They said that they were, forget the way we phrased it, but only like 30% agreed that they were mostly peaceful protests. And that was like only a month or two after that happened. So people saw right through that. What do we have? So which is, this is a little bit of a wash. Which is closer to your opinion? The recent unrest in LA was mostly peaceful protests, 45%. It was a riot, 46%. Well, you got to admit that the scope was just not quite the same as the Summer of Love, you know.
Very true. Yeah.
And I saw the No Kings rally by us, and it was just a bunch of like, you know, it was like 1,000 happy boomer, not happy. It was like 1,000 white boomers, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like basically 70-year-old Karens and the male feminists who got dragged along with them, you know.
Your numbers on deportation were pretty solid, though, right? On the question of all of them. I mean, CNN, I can't remember the guy's name. He always sits there in front of the board with, you know, gets a little excited saying, and look at this number, or look at this number. But he put up, I think, 4 or 5 different, regular leftist media polls. And those numbers were, I think, the lowest one in there for deport all of them. I think the lowest number was 56%. And it went up to, I think, 62 or 64%, the range. What do your numbers show?
I think we're doing it literally again right now with the word all. We've tried it a bunch of different ways. The one that stood out to me is in the battlegrounds. We asked, would you support 100% deportation or 100% amnesty candidate? And their 100% deportation, you got to understand, that's a really high hurdle to clear. It's still won 55 to 35, depending on the state. And then the word mass deportation gets into the 60s, more than a 2-to-1 ratio. And so also some of this you have to understand is going to change, like as the border's shut, as there's less images of these major caravans, people are literally going to become less pro-deportation. It's just going to happen.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons why they say, oh, we're going to do strategic one. It's going to drag out for years. Well, your political capital to do this is going to go away, at least somewhat. But what was wild to me about that Harry Enton clip is that I didn't see a clip like that from last year or the year before that when we were asking people, how would you describe what's happening as the southern border and invasion, and is Joe Biden complicit? And those were all majorities as well, right?
Sure.
So it's like, imagine if they had asked those questions. And those questions, I think, are a little bit even to the right of my results. But their Trump polling is not. That's the wild thing. Yeah. And so they didn't poll on those questions. They didn't go into the election understanding the public opinion context of what Americans think about this stuff. And that's how you get Kamala Harris up like 7 points or whatever she was in Reuters Ipsos. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
I think when you look at what would you say, sort of the flavor of America when you had on July 4th, you had the No Kings stuff going on. And then you had the 250th Army, parade, and Trump happened to be his birthday also, and watching him, watching the planes fly over the White House just before the fireworks started and all that. I got to tell you, it reminded me sort of Reagan. And the whole America is back, morning in America thing. Reagan was, hated by, the lefties. But so many Americans, like, just head over heels about him, that all of the protest against him was really pretty much muted, at least on Main Street it was. But here, this is crazy. I mean, I laughed about the TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, but the more I watch all of this and the more I hear some of these people talking on their little TikToks and their Twitters and all that stuff, and I'm like, these people, I mean, they really do seem to be like emotionally affected, like something's wrong.
Yeah, we're in a really weird place, which is, I forget if we've brought this up before on your show, but the forced turning, I think, is rapidly approaching its end. And the reason that's important from a public opinion standpoint is because opinion can change very, very rapidly about this. We've seen it a lot on some things and not a lot on others. And so what should happen over the next couple of years is that we go through a major crisis that tries people and makes them come together and crave more institutional strength and integrity. And we're not there yet, but we're seeing the first cracks. And what I think kind of played out is that Trump, I don't want to say he won on a fluke, but you have to acknowledge that in 2016, people were taking it was a trial. It was a trial run for something that America wasn't quite ready with, but got anyways, and liked a lot of, right?
Yeah.
But then what happened in 2020 is they really used the cultural zeitgeist around this idea of coming together, fighting against this virus, this mass formation. A lot of people got political for the very first time. They were all doing Disney sing-alongs on ABC, and then they went to the ballot box, right?
Yep.
And then what happened is Biden sucked. He was horrifying, and within 9 months, his approval absolutely imploded, and he was not the person that they had promised them. Then the prices went up, then the judicial system got weaponized, and all the things that happened under Biden administration, I think changed America in that what is anything that you can point to that has been the cultural zeitgeist for the last 3 or 4 years? You're not hearing everybody talk about Game of Thrones. You're not hearing, everybody stopped going to these movies. Everybody stopped. And what the cultural zeitgeist, in my opinion, became, and it's why the culture war was won, and I think it enabled the Trump win in 24, is that the zeitgeist became railing against basically the establishment. You go to YouTube, people were making more money crapping on Marvel movies than actually from the movies themselves, as an example. And so what's the zeitgeist now? It's not riots. Right direction is high. Maybe it was Trump's inauguration. Almost 60% said that we were going to have a new golden age under, it was like 55%, new golden age under Trump. And there will be a new zeitgeist. And I'm looking for it. And that's how we will know that people's opinions are realigning and reforming. And it's not no kings. That was very fake and inauthentic. I just looked at the Google search trend volume. You see one spike and it's gone. Nobody's talking about that. It didn't mean anything, even though it was the biggest political rally in American history. That's what's wild.
Yeah.
And so the Democrats have lost their ability to be at the core of culture. Republicans have not filled a vacuum, and you have these listless people who came together to get Trump into office looking towards the future, and I think on Twitter chewing their fingernails that this thing's going to get derailed.
Yeah.
So that's the dangerous situation we're at.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I do think there's, I don't know if Speaker Johnson would be one of the guys, but there's certainly a Republican establishment that would be very happy to watch it be derailed. They don't like Trump. Some of them, a few of them are a little bit more outspoken about that. But I don't think that's just a handful of people who happen to say something or post something, GOP lawmakers. I think there's a huge undercurrent there, and they just don't want to go up against Trump's popularity and get primaried, next year.
I had a big talk about this with a guest last night, Gary Heasley from the Conservative Voice, and he knows a lot about the grassroots and the state organizations. And so I talked to him a lot to understand that people don't really understand how the Republican apparatus works. Right. They know there's things like the precinct strategy, and they know there's something called the RNC at the top. And all the rest of it's a complete mess, and Elon doesn't even understand it. Yeah. So what we were trying to spitball is if you had $1 billion, how would you fix the Republican Party? And what's weird is that the Democrats have all of these support mechanisms and feedback loops to make sure, carrots and sticks, to make sure that they all vote like they're supposed to. That doesn't exist on the Republican side. It's literally just everybody doing whatever the hell they want.
Yep.
Some of them are corrupt, but not all of them. They're trying to represent their districts. They're probably trying to keep their financial backers happy as well.
Sure.
But they're trying to have principle and make good votes and decisions. And then what you have is that these big names, these power brokers, these people that can use their connections to run the NRCC, to run the your Kevin McCarthy's and Mitch McConnell's, pulling things behind the scenes, picking winners and losers to make sure that their interests are happy and that they can maintain a status quo. Those people want Trump gone. I think a lot of the Republicans support this idea of MAGA and think it's probably good, but there's no carrot and stick for them to vote a particular way. It's all just herding cats, and that's how you line. And I don't think Johnson's one of these people, but it's what he's up against, and he's certainly not leading. He's just whipping votes and making deals behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, you got to wonder what to get the big beautiful bill across the line. Was that Tuesday and Wednesday last week? What conversations was Trump having with those individual kind of the 8 who didn't vote on the first go round? Like, what sort of conversations were you having there? And were there trades being done? Were there threats like, you better do this? I mean,
Of course. Remember, who was it? Dianne Feinstein confronting Murkowski in the hallway. That picture. Yeah, I'll remember that the rest of my life. Yeah, of course, all of that. And I'm cynical enough to think that bill probably started getting drafted up a year ago before Trump even won. Heck, it was probably drafted. I bet you a lot of that is carryover from 19 and 20, where Republicans are like already accruing lists of things that they owe each other for all the back scratching that went on.
Sure,
it's probably that dark. And so it's like, yeah, let's codify 28 Trump executive orders so that we have a nice top line. But it's like, this is the Republican pay each other bill. That's probably what's going on. Right?
I'm sure it probably is. You made a promise, and the next bill will attach this rider, or 2 bills down the road will attach the rider you want.
Yeah.
It all just kind of eventually makes it across the finish line just a little bit later, and you kind of keep the lid on the boiling pot. Just to get it there.
Yeah, Democrats are working on their 28 infrastructure bill even as we speak.
I think I just read also this morning that they're trying to put together some sort of investigative committee, and they're setting up some little shadow government. That's not what they call it, but that's what it is in effect. I think it's interesting they're actually coming out and saying this stuff now. When they were doing it to Trump in 2016, everybody was very quiet about it and, had some bit of an air of respectability about it. Now it's just like, we got to get this guy, we got to kill him. And they're just all out there with it. I mean, it's really astonishing. I've never heard this level of, I don't even want to call it political discourse, because that implies there's some politeness going on when you use the word discourse. I've never ever seen this kind of vitriol, from paid immigrants, throwing crap and shooting at, ambushing law enforcement officers to kill them. Buildings and the riots and the fires and all that stuff and everything else. But on top of it, you've just got nonstop Democratic Party leaders, saying, get out in the streets and burn them down and, blow this up. And it's crazy.
I agree. Profound signal of electoral unviability is what I think that is. I think they know they're screwed. And I don't think people should discount the Democrats, because they will probably pull some electoral asymmetry out of their rears that nobody's thought of, that was gamed out in like all of these, globalist war room sessions they have. I don't know. It's happened before, right?
Sure.
Like they had all 2020 worked all the way out. But again, from a national perspective, their best candidate is Kamala Harris right now.
Wow.
And if you look at the search trend volumes, nobody cares. It's like she doesn't even exist, and yet she's still beating people. And then like the next 2 people down, the next couple, are Gavin Newsom, Buttigieg, and Shapiro. And I don't see Shapiro doing very well in a modern Democrat Party for certain innate reasons. And then you have like Gavin Newsom. That guy's never been able to get over 35% nationally, as far as I recall.
He's down at like 9% or something, isn't he now?
Well, in the Democrat, who would you vote for out of a list of long candidates? He gets about 9-10%. Kamala Harris is still getting in the mid 30s. But I'm saying, like, if I put him in a matchup right now against J.D. Vance, I don't think he'll score over 36, 37. Like, he just does not. I've never seen him get above 40. And it's because he's a lizard person, you know?
Exactly.
And I think all of them have their unelectable flaws. And, they will pick somebody. And 46% of the country, at least, will get behind them.
Right.
But the problem's in 26. Like, Trump's not on the ballot. Everybody's happy he's in. They haven't rolled up Act Blue yet. Maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe there will be a Supreme Court ruling 2 months out that will be the absolute perfect thing for Democrats. It's really hard to predict these things. But again, you're right. They're accelerating. They are accelerating 100%. Yeah, and it's dangerous.
What do you think of the I love being able to do this, just bounce topics off your head and see what your thoughts are on them. What do you think of how the whole the underlying case of birthright citizenship? Not all the judges, do they have the authority, local judges and all that, skipping that, going straight to the question of the 14th Amendment. And it certainly does seem, everything I'm hearing, I mean, they're going to challenge this and go, and going to be heard in October, and whenever the ruling comes down, that's what everybody who's talking about this is saying it. And I'm just curious what you think of it. There are two sort of cases where this is attempted to be adjudicated, I suppose you could say, legislated in one. There's the one case, it's an Asian name, I can't remember the name of the parties, and the court ruled, yes, their child born here is an American citizen. But both of them were legal residents. The parents were legal residents. So there wasn't a question of illegality. So, I mean, the thing that Trump is going at, that case has never arrived in front of the Supreme Court before. Illegal aliens have a child on American soil. Is that an American citizen or not? That case, that's what's working its way up to the Supreme Court right now. The other thing, it's not a case, it's a bill got signed into law, a bill from Congress, that Native Americans on reservations who were, children were born here, that they're citizens. And that was the bill, that they're citizens, and I can't remember who the president was that signed it, but they had to put a special piece of legislation through, is the point, because it was not altogether clear then that if you just happen to, pop out of mommy and the dirt under your feet is American soil, that you're automatically an American citizen. I don't think this is one that the Democrats win. I don't know where their argument is.
Well, it comes. So much of this is framing and how, what happens, right? And it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of things there's a million questions I can ask about abortion, but the Supreme Court did what it did when it did it, and it's like, okay, now this is where we're at.
Right.
And this could be one of those things. And the other problem is you have this word birthright, where you say anchor baby, whatever, right? And people probably conclude what they think about it before they even hear the whole question.
Sure.
And so it's tough to poll because we can't just say, do you support this or that? And you don't really know what people are thinking. So you got to be very specific with the questions. And you still might not even predict the right context of how it gets used or what happens in the courts. But we polled on it, obviously. I pulled them up. Do you support or oppose the U.S. changing its current practice of granting U.S. citizenship to births to tourists and other foreign visitors. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but it's close, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And 51% support, only 37% opposed. So directionally, it's a little bit more tepid than deporting everybody. But it's support. Do you support or oppose the U.S. changing its current practice of granting U.S. citizenships to births to illegal immigrants who were released into the United States over the last 4 years? And this one actually does less, 44% to 43%, so split. And I really don't. I guess they assume that, hey, they're here. We do have this anchor baby thing or whatever. But then, do you support or oppose limiting automatic birthright citizenships to births where at least one parent is a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident? Then people are like, oh, okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense. And so that has really strong support, 56 to 35.
Yeah, so it's which way do you slice and dice the issue there with the question? Those questions are all essentially, coming at the same issue from three different ways.
Yeah.
So,
well, what this means, I think, in the end of the day is people are just going to trust Trump. If his approval rating is still positive, then it will not change because of whatever happens probably, right? Yeah. Unless the Democrats are able to somehow rally people around, something about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they'll try to find some victim of something or, whatever, and, running with their cameras and make everybody cry.
Yeah. But Maryland father did not work. I can tell you that. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't, they just don't have the mojo they used to have. I think the whole social media thing, kind of like the Democrats, Democratic leadership, just kind of got blindsided by the whole Trump phenomenon. They're marching down the road to craziness, and along comes Trump, and they're like, "Whoa, what the hell is this? What's going on?" I think the same thing has happened with the that sort of elitist left-wing Marxist media crowd that they were just like untouchable. 60 Minutes. We speak for 60 Minutes, and MSNBC and whoever, and their ratings are in the absolute toilet. I think some of these, CNN's prime demographic, the 24 to 50, 25 to 54, their average during prime time with the prized demographic, 500,000 viewers. This is CNN.
I think the culture war is still being fought. If I had to pick a day where I think that the tide turned in the culture war, it would be the day with that interview where, the race car driver, it's like, oh, what are they chanting? The FJB stuff in the stadium.
Yeah.
That's when it changed. The day that people started chanting F. Joe Biden at stadiums is where the tide of the battle changed. Then you saw things like people boycotting Bud Light. You saw people crapping on all the movies. You saw people stopping to go to them. And not long after, Twitter was purchased. Yeah. And I think a lot of leftists stayed on Twitter. I wasn't a huge Twitter user up until about last summer. But I think it was just like, okay, well, they're not censoring trends. People are coming back. Accounts are being unbanned, right?
Right.
And then I think that leftists got defeated on Twitter at literally on election day. They all left. They went to Blue Sky. It was not the right thing for them. Blue Sky has lost over half of its traffic since the election. It was a huge spike. It's gone down. Yeah. And they're back, but they've completely ceded the territory. If you're a leader and there's still a lot of them, they're not the majority. And if you are a primary Democrat leader, you're going to get ratioed probably, and the top responses are going to be people undermining all of your logic. Yep. And they haven't figured out how to deal with that at all, because just last August, not even a year ago, they were very effective at moving 18 to 29-year-old women like 20 points left immediately because of Kamala Harris, Brett Summer, and all this Instagram garbage that they did, right?
Right.
So I don't know if they could still do that or not, but they're demoralized, defeated. They don't have the tools that capable. They have nothing in the zeitgeist at all right now.
Yeah. I mean, cheering for ICE agents to get shot at and ambushed
Fawning over Luigi Mangione. Like, what are they doing, right?
Yeah, it's quite crazy. Mark, we're quickly out of time. You got a last thought for us?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a big week. We're streaming tomorrow night, Thursday. We'll be streaming at 7:00 Eastern, talking to an FBI agent about what he thinks is going on with the Epstein stuff. But again, Trump can say the Epstein story is not huge, but I think it's a really big telltale of how the rest of his administration is going to play out and what the future of MAGA is.
Yep.
Because the future of MAGA is a lot of things. It's whatever Trump says he needs it to be at the time.
Right.
But ultimately what it is that America under the elite managerial class has not worked for the middle class. One of that is that they destroyed everything, the rule of law, families, religion, economics, and it needs to be corrected. And so you can't just carve out part of that and say, well, we don't need to correct this because of the way things work. Yeah. Trust us, bro.
Bingo.
Not going to work.
Yeah, that's a good insight. I always, maybe it's because I'm Irish, always have this, oh gosh, what can go wrong thing. Hopefully somebody in the White House wakens up and realizes, well, we better do something about this Epstein thing and better do it fast. Neutralize it. Most people are on summer vacation and everything right now. It hasn't, as you said, gotten into Normieville quite yet, although it's starting to breach the walls.
Yeah.
So they need to fix all that. Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Polling. Everybody who's watching this, you can see this is why we have him on frequently. He's got numbers, he's got data, he's got great opinions, he's got smart thoughts. So everything. Mark, thanks very much for coming on.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. They should fire Pam Bondi. They should move Kash Patel over to head up the Department of Justice, and they should put Dan Bongino in charge of the FBI. And they should do it yesterday. That's probably what they should do.
Yeah. I have no arguments with that. Mark, thanks very much, man. God bless you, brother. Thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks.
All right, and coming to you, signing off here in Houston, Texas. I'm Gary Michael Voris for In Depth, production of Souls and Liberty. God love you.